Over the course of the last 5+ years, I've seen Mario Maker have a lot of problems, from the abysmal online experience to the overall lack of updates. But if you were to ask me what was Mario Maker's biggest problem, well, I think one stands far above the others. One so bad, it could go as far as to affect the longevity of a Mario Maker 3 if Nintendo doesn't fix it. So, let me paint the picture here, and show you just what I mean. It's a lovely Saturday morning. You wake up, use the restroom, and look over to your Nintendo Switch, wondering what you'll be playing today. And as you look at your game of libraries, you notice it. Mario Maker. You know, it's been a while since I played Mario Maker. Let's try building a level. So, you open the game, head over to the course maker, and start building. And this kinda sucks. I'm gonna play something else. Why does this seemingly happen to so many people? You're watching your favorite Mario Maker content creator showcase or make a really cool level, and suddenly you're feeling so inspired to make a level of your own. But as you start building, that excitement in you quickly starts to fade out. But why does that happen? Some would say they lost the inspiration and couldn't continue, and others would say a key component of their level wasn't working and made them lose motivation. But really, there's one core issue that lies at the root of all these problems. And sorry if this sounds really unprofessional, but the answer is the game is just too baby down. So today, I'm going to talk about this glaring issue, and what exactly I mean by baby down, what I believe the solution to said problem is, and how exactly Nintendo can implement it into Mario Maker 3 so that the game is a success. Now, what do I mean by baby down? Well, listen to this. I'd argue that you could do more in this game with one block that has 100 different customization options than with 100 unique blocks with no customization. And that's the problem. The reality is that this game doesn't let us, as a creator, do a lot of creating. We don't have the ability to do much with the objects we're given, despite there being hundreds of them. For example, why is it only possible to have 2 checkpoints in a level? Or why is it possible to only have one subworld? And why can said subworld not have custom autoscroll? And why do you need a full-on wall to stop autoscroll? Why isn't there just an option to just disable it in certain areas? That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I mean by too baby down. There just aren't enough options at our disposal. Instead, the game only kept what I assumed the devs thought was absolutely necessary for the game to be what it is. Whether it's not being able to place blocks between 2 tiles, or tracks not being able to overlap each other. Problems like these are admittedly small, but the course maker is filled to the brim with issues like these, from things like having limited item use, or not being able to make the timer infinite, or being limited to one life system. All of these small things add up, and over time makes it very hard to find the inspiration needed to make a new level. And it doesn't stop there. There are features in this game that are fully programmed, and for whatever reason the devs thought creators did not need access to. Anyone remember those story mode exclusive clear conditions? Like reach the goal without leaving the water, or after entering X amount of claws, or the most popular one of them all, with X amount of toads in tow. Why were those left as story mode exclusives in the first place? Sure, a clear condition like do 3 handstands is pretty specific considering it's relegated to one item in one style, but the point here is that these extra clear conditions open up more possibilities for the types of levels people are creating. I can guarantee you that even with a clear condition as niche as doing handstands on trees, someone out there could come up with an insanely creative level revolving around it. We have all these different objects we can play around with between the 5 different game styles, but when you look at what you can do with each item individually, it just isn't that much. Now, I can't completely blame Nintendo for this problem existing, because I do believe that the Mario Maker community plays a role in why the game is like this as well. I'm sure that if you were to ask most players what they'd want in a Mario Maker 3, they'd probably say something like a Mario Wonder game style, or the Ice Flower, and new items and themes and blah 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 blah. And don't get me wrong, I want all of those things just as much as the next person. I literally made a video speculating about if we would get a Super Mario Wonder style in Mario Maker 3. But that just isn't going to solve anything. Let's say Super Mario Maker 3 comes out next week. Listen, a man can dream, alright? And they introduce all these new things like captures and wonder flowers and new power-ups, all the good stuff. What's going to happen is players will be in their, honeymoon phase where everything is great and there's all these new things to test out and everyone is building all sorts of cool things. But within a year or two, we'll be right back at square one where it's like, okay, now we're starting to see the same type of levels being built, but just with a different shade. I'm looking at you, Japanese new soup speedruns. At which point, players will turn to the next solution, Uno/glitch levels, and we know how Nintendo feels about those. The end result of all of this being players losing interest in the game. All of this would happen within the first 2 years of the game being released. And I don't think I need to explain what happens once the game starts losing traction.
We'll be releasing the last major update.
There's really no need to speculate either. The proof is in the pudding. Just look at 3D World, which introduced so many new objects specific to that style, and yet is considered the worst by most people. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that the style doesn't have a lot of customization. If Nintendo is paying any sort of attention to what the players want to make the game better, most of what they see would be new power-ups and enemies and game styles. But in reality, all that does is create a situation where the game constantly needs to be updated to feel fresh. Let's take a look at Minecraft. Yes, that game gets updates all the time, but the game is already so fleshed out that it could get an update every 5 years, and within that time, players could still find ways to create new experiences. If you really wanted to, you could update the game yourself with things like command blocks and mods. The fact that it gets updated frequently is honestly a bonus. I'm not saying Mario Maker doesn't need updates, but it definitely shouldn't be in a state where it needs updates to be exciting. So maybe you could call this a hot take, but I'd rather have a Mario Maker 3 that's exactly the same as Mario Maker 2, but with 10 times more options, than one with new items and themes and game styles. In fact, I'm willing to say the former would actually outlive a Mario Maker like that. Well, in terms of engagement at least. I don't know about sales considering it would just be Mario Maker 2 2.0. Now, let me be clear here. Everything I've mentioned isn't just a Course Maker issue. It extends to the entirety of Mario Maker. Because let's be honest, the game entirely revolves around the Maker mode, whether it's Super Worlds, Endless mode, or online. A player's experience is dependent on the levels they're presented. If it's bad, they'll most likely avoid the level entirely. If it's good, then it's good, and it will leave them wanting more potentially. But when the game is in a situation where it's so babied down that there's only so few ways to customize their experience as a creator, it has the effect of players seeing the same types of levels over and over. And because of the way this game's algorithm works, it's very hard to find actual unique levels out there because they just don't get pushed out for others to see. I mean, I made a level recently that combines the behavior of a Piranha Creeper and Twister to make for some interesting gameplay, but you wanna know how many plays that got? Eventually the game is just going to die out because creators are struggling to come up with something creative and unique to build, and players are seeing the same types of levels over and over again. And it all just goes back to the game being too babied down, really. Now, it's no mystery why the game is designed this way. It's pretty obvious, in fact. The game is just geared towards a younger audience, so naturally it's in their best interest to make the game simple to understand so it's appealing to them. But at the end of the day, it's not just kids playing this game. So the question becomes, how can they add more options to the game, really let us become creators without neglecting a large majority of the player base? And well, I think I may have found a solution. Should've got more water. So I want to ask you all a question, and feel free to type your answer into the comments, but how many hours do you have in Mario Maker? I, at the time of writing the script, have 1,860 hours. Now let me go ahead and say, no, this wasn't a setup to flex my hours in Mario Maker, but I guess it did kind of end up working out that way, huh? But for those living under a rock, whenever you open a game for the first time, your Switch will begin keeping track of how many hours you've played it for, though it only displays the first 10 days from when you first opened it. Now, I'm not sure if this is something that was first added with the Switch, but for over 6 years, they have done absolutely nothing with this feature as far as I know. All it does is show to your friends how long you've played a game for. But that's about to change. Because with the release of the Nintendo Switch 2 being around the corner, Nintendo decided they wanted to give this little feature some use. So what they've done is instead of just having a number displayed under whatever game, you'll actually be rewarded for achieving a certain amount of playtime in that game based on how much content it has. So for example, a game like Mario and Luigi Brothership, which has an average playthrough of around like 50 hours, will allow you to discover a new island once you reach say 60 or 65 hours. Or a game like Tears of the Kingdom, which can easily last you over 100 hours on your first playthrough, would get you access to a rare weapon once you reach 150 hours, because the game just has so much to explore. And a game like Mario Maker, a game that literally has infinite content, a game that can easily have you spend multiple hundreds or even thousands of hours on, could expand upon the course maker for hitting a certain amount of hours. Now exactly how many hours that is depends from person to person, but I'd say it's somewhere around 500, but that part isn't really important. What is though, is what you'll get access to from reaching those hours. Essentially with Mario Maker 3, you'd have your normal course maker with most of the same functions and limitations as 2, but then suddenly, one day you go to your course maker and a notification pops up. Congrats on reaching 500 hours! Advanced Maker Mode is now available, and it's just a creator paradise. A mode where most of the limitations are removed or at a minimum expanded upon. Infinite checkpoints, course part limit being tripled or quadrupled, being able to change block physics, size, and shape, uncapped subworlds, having enemies use power-ups, changing from one style to another in the same level, allowing you to use powers from all styles in one level, and probably more. Now, I know this sounds like a literal pipe dream since Nintendo would never let us have this much control over a game because they know we can't be trusted with so much variability, which is fair. We all know the little Timmies would have a field day with this mode, but that's exactly why a 500 hour criteria would work so well. 500 hours in the context of Mario Maker isn't really that much. You might see my 1800 plus hours and think it's because I'm a Mario Maker content creator and it's only natural I'd have this many, but let me tell you right now, at least 70% of those hours come from long before I started making videos. But even if you do think 500 is a lot, that's the point. It shouldn't be something easy to reach that you can do after a week of playing the game, but more like a journey, and not a journey to an end goal, but one leading to the start of another. Because if they were to implement this advanced mode, it should feel like playing Mario Maker from scratch again once you unlock it, testing and learning all sorts of things, learning how different objects will interact with each other. The point isn't to have little Timmies make even more intricate garbage, but to create new inspiration by opening a world of new options after being accustomed to this simpler style for so long. And not to mention, all of this would be possible without steering away from the younger audience, since they obviously wouldn't have access to this mode yet, but still have standard level maker mode to go off of. And when they finally do reach 500 hours, if they haven't already dropped the game by then, they'll presumably have mastery over the standard mode, meaning the chances of them making some hot garbage level using the advanced mode is drastically lower. Now, this is hot garbage we're talking about. They're going to exist no matter what, but a format like this would definitely help reduce the amount made using advanced mode. But like I said, 500 is just a number I came up with. It could even be as low as 250, and I still think that could work well. So essentially, what I've done is introduce a new advanced course maker mode that's unlocked through reaching a certain amount of playtime, and opens up a whole new world of options for makers to get creative with, which then solves the issue of potentially losing a large majority of the game's player base since they'll still have access to the standard course maker mode. But there is still one more issue. What if you're already an experienced player? Or what if you're someone like me who has thousands of hours in Mario Maker? Or someone who played both Mario Maker 1 and 2, and now suddenly you're being asked to play the game for another 500 hours to access the most exciting features? Even if Mario Maker 3 did introduce a new style and enemies and power-ups, as someone who's well versed in the game, spending another 500 hours to finally get an entire new mode would be awful. I guess that does sound like I'm contradicting what I said like a minute ago about how 500 hours in the context of Mario Maker isn't a lot, but having to hit 500 hours after already having reached it is just stupid, alright? But what do you do then? Well, I might also have a solution to that. If you somehow didn't hear, the Switch 2 has been confirmed to have backwards compatibility, meaning any game on the Switch can also be played on the Switch 2, making for a very seamless transition between the two consoles. And along with those games, it should theoretically be possible to transfer the data from those games, as in their playtime. You see where I'm going with this? Let's say Mario Maker 3 is a Switch 2 launch title, and I get the console and game day one and transfer all my data. What they can do is sync up both Mario Maker 2 and 3 so that however many hours you had in Mario Maker 2 prior to the sync gets transferred over to 3, essentially making it possible for someone like me to get access to the advanced maker mode immediately. because it's basically telling Nintendo, okay, this guy's been playing Mario Maker for a while now, so it's safe to assume he's mature enough to handle this mode. Or if you're someone with 400 hours in the game, you wouldn't need to get another 500 hours, but now only 100, so now you wouldn't have to worry about keeping your Switch on 24/7 for the next 2 months. If Nintendo wants Mario Maker 3 to be a successful release, I think this is the #1 problem they need to fix. So that way, they can create a world where creators can make unique levels, players can have new experiences, and kids can still play the game without feeling like they're learning coding. All they need to do is just give us more options and creative liberty, not just new power-ups and game styles. And this isn't just an issue limited to Mario Maker, by the way. Even games like the recent Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom have this issue, which Sea of Gaming actually addressed in one of his recent videos. So if you want to hear about that, I'll leave a link to his video where he talks about this issue in more depth. That video is actually what pushed me to make this one, so check it out.